Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Right wing losing its mind today. Losing its mind. Why? U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan issued a protective order. U.S. versus Trump. She decided that, we can't have you out there spewing a bunch of nonsense. We can't have you making inflammatory statements. We can't have you out there, soiling the jury pool. She said, in quote, the more a party makes inflammatory statements, the greater the urgency will be to proceed to trial quickly. I will take whatever means necessary to safeguard the integrity of these proceedings. Which means all of the stuff that the prosecution is going to hand over in disclosure, Trump's not going to be able to go on the Truth Social and attack. Not going to try this in the court of public opinion. Going to try this in the court of law. Is basically what she's saying. Look, you want to end this quickly? Let's get to trial. Not going to happen. You're not going to try it on the internet. In fact, she said that the Trump defense is conflating what your client needs to what needs to defend himself to what your client wants to do politically. Your client's defense is supposed to happen in the courtroom, not on the internet. And I agree. She added, he is a criminal defendant. Now you remember, day one, first indictment. The first thing I said was, no longer treat him like Mr. President, no longer treat him special. He is a defendant. That's what she's doing. He is a criminal defendant. He is going to have restrictions like every single other defendant. Now that has got to be eating in the brain of Trump because he thinks he's special. And this is telling him, no, not quite. Now, what I find interesting, and before I get into all of the right-wing blather I consume today, I find it interesting that some conservative groups are, some that have been friendly. A couple of prominent conservative law professors tied to the Federalist Society, they are making the argument that Trump should be disqualified for running. Now, remember, we had the folks on from Crew a couple of weeks ago talking about the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. And they were saying, look, the Constitution bars him from running. We should be pursuing this, and made a very cogent, very strong argument for why he should be excluded from running. I am not one of those people. I think he should run. I think he should be allowed to run. I think we, the people, have to beat him at the polls, vote him down, and vote down this insanity. The only way we get to go forward is by the sane and the rational among us taking this country back somewhere near the sane line. I'm not saying all the way sane. We're probably not going to happen in my lifetime because I think we've allowed things to go too far off the deep end. There are a lot of people who are angry and bitter and broken who have bought into the outrage candy, gives them something to make them feel better about themselves. And I don't think that's going to change for a very long time. The grievance crowd, they're not going anywhere, but the sanity crowd gonna have to step up their game. Now, a couple of things that caught my attention today. A Republican staffer, a guy named Justin Higgins, he was quoted by Newsweek, and this isn't new, but this is another moment where you've got another Republican coming forward and going, look, in right-wing media spaces, his quote is, you can basically make up your own reality in right-wing media. And that's what I consumed today. Spent a lot of time with my ears on the right-wing mouthpieces. Lots of free speech. This is all about free speech. They're trying to silence poor Donald. He was just, speaking his. There's a difference between free speech and then taking that free speech and acting on it. And again, there was lots of talk about Hillary, lots of Benghazi, you name the conspiracy theory of the past. Dug up a whole bunch of Bill stuff. Oh, it was like going down memory lane. It was going down crazy memory lane. And they were just the grievance after anger. And you know that the audience is they're just consuming this hatred and this anger. And because all I saw today, lots of veiled and unveiled threats. And in fact, our quote of the day comes from Michigan State Representative Matt Maddock, who kind of summed it up. I guess he was at a private event. Someone recorded it, because nothing's ever really private anymore. He said, if the government continues to weaponize these departments against conservatives, nobody plays the victim like a conservative, and the citizens that are then the taxpayers, you know what's going to happen to this country. Mighty nice house you got there. Shame to see something happen to it. He goes on to say someone's going to get ticked off, used a different word, and they're going to shoot someone. That's what's going to happen, he said. Or we're going to have a civil war or some sort of revolution. That's where this is going. And look, the reality is there's a lot of voices out there, a lot of insaniacs who are preying on the downtrodden, the struggling, the broken, people who have lots of time to consume lots of crazy and blame others for the fact that their life isn't going quite the way that they dreamt or were told as was their birthright. And as I'm going through this, my mind is thinking of all the people I've known throughout the years who have basically not just fallen into this right-wing cesspool rabbit hole, but have dove headfirst into it. And how I know this is playing with that crowd. The victim crowd, man, today was their day. They're silencing, Donald Trump. This is America. You have the right to free speech. No, not entirely. Sorry, you don't. And it's this fantasy. And I watched a clip of Kevin McCarthy. He's allowed to say stuff. Hillary said stuff. There's a difference between thinking things and talking it out and talking to lawyers and just spitballing, and then basically causing an insurrection. There's a huge difference. There's the words, not going to get you into trouble. Then there's the deeds. And again, we're in this moment where it's the deeds that they are pursuing. It's the language that was pushed to others to get them to act. And I would go back to this state representative who seems to be talking the dog whistle. You keep this up, you keep doing what we don't like, and someone's going to get hurt. And this is the thing that the right understands really well, because they've made their fortunes off of people who are really angry and broken and struggling, and feel the grievance crowd, the people who feel life didn't turn out exactly like they were sold, because they believed they were all going to get the corner office, they were all going to have six-figure salaries, they were going to all be Jeff Bezos's, life was going to be amazing. And what's happened is a lot of these people are getting old, they're breaking down, and life ain't fair. Life's a struggle. And then you throw into this a machine, an incredibly powerful echo chamber machine, bent on taking that anger and that frustration and that struggle and turning it into pure outrage, and then pointing them in a direction, the others. It's that person over there that took your cookie, not the boss who stole all of them. It's that guy over there. It's your neighbor. And the right understands when they do the dog whistle, the people hear. Their people hear. And the other day I talked about the crazy guy who threatened not just President Biden, but Alvin Bragg and a whole slew of people. And the FBI went to go pick him up, as the FBI will tend to do when you make a death threat against a public official. And he barricaded himself in the house. There was a shootout, and he's now dead. I find it interesting Because here's the thing, and this is where I've had conversations with Republican operatives who are really fearful of what they've unleashed. You know, the whole reason that you have all these never Trumpers and all of these people who have left the Republican Party is they figured they caught on to it's out of the bag. The genie's out of the bottle. The crazy is out of the bottle. And they don't know how to get it back, and they're scared. That's the reason. That's the reason that they've had this great epiphany. I would argue not because they're decent, good people and care about you or me. They care about themselves. They care about how crazy this is going to get. So when you had this situation of this guy in Utah, because understand, the right-wing machine, it doesn't matter who you are. You look at what happened with that Peter Hotez. You know, because he won't debate a crazy guy over vaccines. They were showing up at his house. But this guy in Utah, I gotta wonder when the right wing is going to, I don't know, turn on Trump. Because Trump is about Trump. He's always been about Trump. He's never been about, care about you or me. He doesn't care about he could care less about people. Cares about himself, cares about his legacy, cares about people loving him and propping him up. That's what he cares about. I find it interesting that the guy in Utah, the FBI was tipped off by Truth Social. Should I say that again? So the people in the back can hear that? The guy in Utah, because remember, you know, the Twitters and the Facebooks, they're all spying on us. We need our own crazy media. And thus, Truth Social. Truth Social ratted the guy out. Again, understand, the people behind the curtain, they know what the game is. They know that it's about dividing you and me and neighbors and communities against each other so that the people behind the curtain can continue to rob us blind, can continue to get what they want. And this is another one of those moments where they're protecting themselves, not you, not me, not anybody, themselves and their status. And the sooner we wake up to this, and you know, I've been having this conversation a lot with people on the idea that we got to put down the red hats and the blue hats and hard hat. Get to work. We reunite this country when we reunite the working class. We reunite this country and move forward when work matters and work pays. When we can support a family, when we can start looking towards retirement, when good things can happen. What the right takes massive advantages of is people struggling. Is people's frustrations that they've had stagnant wages for 40 years. They're losing their homes. They're losing their savings. They're going broke. And the right is there to go, here's who you blame. They're masters at it. And I keep saying, whoever policy-wise comes forward and pushes to make things better for these folks will get their attention. Which is why, again, I think what Biden's doing is so very important. But I want to hear your thoughts. Did you consume the crazy today? Anybody yell at you about free speech and they're silencing poor, pitiful Donald? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The reality is we got real problems. And the right understands that. Don't want us to address that. But they most certainly understand that there are problems. And I look at a lot of it are, come back to jobs, come back to employment, come back to our ability to have a future for the working class. To me, that's where we need to be focusing our attention. That's where we need to be drawing people together. This is the winning argument. Delving deeper into the outrage candy and trying to outrage the outrage masters isn't going to help. This is where hope and opportunity, this is where turning the corner and building an economy that works for people, this is how you bring people back to reality. At least that's my thought. Want to hear yours? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you?
Insane. How about you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
What I wanted to say was this. Did you ever notice how a couple of things? The right wing, they can't say this or that, and obviously, it makes sense why they're not supposed to, meaning Trump and whatnot. And they start screaming it's against the rights and everything else. Yet, on the other hand, they like to take away the same thing from if it's a Democrat or a woman or a minority. And I love how they're screaming now and going, yeah, so we got a special counsel looking into Hunter Biden. They're going to catch Joe Biden, and it's just like, what part of Hunter Biden is a private citizen and did you not get? It's constant deflection and projection.
Yep. But understand,
I'm just sick of it.
But understand, the whole Hunter Biden thing is simply to keep that story at the front of the Insaniac's mind. That doesn't matter if there's no proof there. They've brought nothing forward. Comer's had flop after flop after flop, but it's about keeping it out there and keeping the conspiracy going. Fact be damned, as the guy said, that I quoted earlier, on the right, you don't need any facts or reality. You can make up anything you want.
That's about the truth of it, too. And, yeah, you're correct, on why they're doing it. But I noticed that I forget who it was now because I've read so much the last couple of days. Anyways, some sort of politician or something, somebody said they needed to look into Ivanka and her, her deals with China and all that while she was working in the White House, and Jared with the Saudis. And the right-wingers are losing their mind. And I'm thinking, isn't this the same thing that you're claiming Hunter did? But there you are. Have a good evening.
Yeah, what's good for the goose, good for the gander. Look, I'm not even 100% opposed to, looking into Hunter Biden. I'm not. If he broke the law, he broke the law, like anybody else. And if Joe did, if they can actually prove the allegations that they've made, which they haven't thus far, then there's a recourse for that. Understand, they want to impeach Joe Biden for anything they can make up. They came into office saying we're going to impeach him. There will be retribution. That's the reality. They know what they're doing, and it's all about just keeping the base inflamed, and then us talking about that. So that eats up all of our energy, so that we can't talk about what's coming. We can't talk about how do we plan for the future. How do we plan? I keep coming back to the economy, the jobs. Here's a little tidbit caught my attention. Don't know how much play it got anywhere else outside of the, Trump's going to be silenced and the right's losing their mind. California just approved self-driving taxis. California regulators, let me say this again, just allowed the, what are the companies? What is it, Waymo and Cruise, to have 24/7 paid taxi service in San Francisco. This is the beginning. So you're going to have these automated cars, driving around, collecting money for Waymo and Cruise. This will expand. So, all of the fighting and arguing and the stuff that we did over Lyft and Uber, and all those people who invested so much money of their own money, took on massive investments to get a job, they're going to be out. They're going to be out the door. And this is what we're not allowed to talk about. We're not allowed to talk about the economy. The fact that I don't know if you saw the story coming out of China. You've got the head of the biggest private car manufacturer in China, BYD, Build Your Own Dreams. Their chairman just came out and said, no, that's what it stands for. BYD stands for Build Your Own Dreams. I was just mocking it because it's a good PR thing, and because it's a very American thing. Build your own dreams. How wonderful. But he came out and said the time has come for Chinese brands to step forward, get rid of these legacy, these old legends. And that means Ford, GM. That means the Chrysler folks. That means all of those jobs. That means American jobs. And the reality is, I think Biden knows this is coming and is trying. And this is another one of these moments where this should be something that unifies us. This should be something that as working people, we go, yeah, we should probably have an auto industry. We should probably have a manufacturing base. If nothing, the lessons from World War II, that we were able to very quickly turn those factories into war production. If nothing else, because we have to do everything we do in this country is a military mindset. School lunch programs, milk programs, all that stuff had our highway system was all about the military. So, this is one of those things where you go, maybe you should save your auto industry, but no, not our right-wing friends. No, they're in unions. That's bad. Can't have that. So the president on Wednesday issued an executive order targeting very narrowly critical cutting-edge technology firms that have ties to military, to surveillance, to anything cyber, chip stuff, tech stuff that can be used against us. It's insane, and it's always been crazy to me that we allow the Chinese to have anything to do with our military. Huawei was a perfect example. Why we allowed that to. I know Donald tried, but we're in a moment, and just based on red hat, blue hat, you've got the red hats going, well, the blue hats want to save the auto industry. The blue hats want to take on China. We're against it. And it's so knee-jerk and insane. I remember a day. I do. I'm old enough to remember when divisions stopped at the water's edge. When we agreed on foreign policy, we didn't undermine the leadership outwardly, in public, openly, globally. We didn't do that. But, our guy didn't win, so we're going to tear everything down. Now, the president says, look, China is a ticking bomb. He said they've got some problems. That's not good because when bad folks have problems, they do bad things. And I don't disagree. I got to tell you, those are strong, tough words. But I know he's Sleepy Joe and he's weak and, he's feeble and all of that stuff. I'll take him over what the alternatives are any day. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the International Longshoremen's and Warehousemen's Union was founded, after the victorious strike of 1934 that established the Union Hiring Hall. West Coast Union leaders embarked on an inland campaign to organize the thousands of warehouse workers who handled shipped goods. But West Coast dock workers overwhelmingly chose to join the CIO after it was expelled from the AFL earlier that year. They found that the ILA planned to abandon the warehouse workers they had worked so hard to organize. They also opposed dues assessments to fight the CIO and disagreed with the ILA's hostility to minimum wage laws, Social Security, and unemployment insurance. Radicals like Harry Bridges and others had established themselves not only as workers' leaders, but also led attacks on Jim Crow racism in the ranks and in the industry. The success of the 1934 strike was due in part to the welcoming of blacks into the ranks of the Union. In his book, Workers on the Waterfront, historian Bruce Nelson notes that, quote, the ILWU's well-known opposition to racial discrimination was an important factor in the Union's expansion into Hawaii, not only on the waterfront, but among sugar and pineapple plantation workers. The triumph of the ILWU in Hawaiian agriculture brought about a degree of fraternization across racial lines that few had thought possible. Since then, the Union has beat back numerous Taft-Hartley and McCarthy-era attacks. More recently, the ILWU has been in the forefront of broader social justice struggles, leading walkouts and work stoppages for various political causes. Today, it represents close to 60,000 workers, including those locals that initially refused to affiliate. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
How about a little bit of good news for a change? Specifically, good news about news. The demise of local newspapers has been a very depressing story in the last few years, with several thousand of them gobbled up by Wall Street profiteers. Those money powers loot the publication's assets, then callously shut down each community's paper or reduces them to empty news shells. So that's that. Local print journalism is passé, right? Wrong. High-spirited, community-minded subscribers in places like Glen Rose, Texas, Hamburg, Iowa, Portland, Maine, and International Falls, Minnesota, are humming an upbeat tune of regeneration that could be titled, Not Dead Yet. In Maine, for example, 5 of the state's 6 daily papers and 17 weeklies were sinking under the ownership of an investment group. But all were recently bought by the National Trust for Local News, a nonprofit started 2 years ago. The trust is turning each publication over to local nonprofit owners and helping them find ways to become sustainable. Another new effort called Cherry Road Media has bought 77 rural papers in 17 states, most from the predatory Gannett conglomerate that wanted to dump them. Cherry Road's business plan is simple, old-time genius. Return editorial decision-making to local people and journalists who know the town. Be an active presence and participant in community affairs. Make the locals responsible for sustaining their town's paper and, most important, reinvest profits in real local journalism that advances democracy. This is Jim Hightower saying, in both of these new initiatives, the foremost mission is to serve the common good of the communities, not to pad the wealth of a few distant financiers. To learn more about these models and how you might implement something similar in your town, contact Institute for Rural Journalism, ruraljournalism.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we've been talking about prevailing wage laws pretty much all week since Kamala Harris was in Philadelphia at the Finishing Trades Institute, where they train the next generation of glazers, drywall hangers, painters, the people who are going to do the work that needs to be done thanks to the Biden infrastructure bill. We're going to need a lot of people to rebuild this country. And as I've been saying, got to take off the red hats and the blue hats and pick up a hard hat and get back to work. And that's why I think this so important. But here's the weird thing. Talking about prevailing wage and how it's going to benefit working people and how it's going to benefit communities, all that stuff must have hit a vein with the ABC folks. Not happy. Lots of angry emails in here to share some thoughts on maybe some of those and why prevailing wage laws are so important and how they're going to be helpful to working folks. That's why I've asked Tim Driscoll to talk with us. Tim is the president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. Tim, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thanks for having me back. Glad to be here and glad to hear that you're hitting a nerve with the ABC. Something's going right over there.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you had the vice president in Philadelphia saying, look, we're going to return prevailing wage laws back to the original intent, which was to use taxpayer money to build the things that we need, the things that we want, the roads, the bridges, the schools, all of that stuff, but also to benefit the workers and communities. Music to my ears, and I'm sure to yours as well.
Absolutely. Look, the fundamental principle of Davis-Bacon is to support the communities that the projects are going in. The Davis-Bacon Act, and little footnote here, right? It's a piece of legislation that comes out of the 1930s. It sponsors Representatives Davis and Bacon, Republican members of Congress in the 1930s, who sponsored and actually got this act through Congress. And what the recognition was is that federal dollars shouldn't be put on a project that would allow contractors to come in and undermine the area's standards by taking itinerant workers or workers who could be abused and work below what those locally established terms were. So really, it's just setting the table fair for all contractors to compete at the same level and not on the backs of workers.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you, but what do you say to the people? Because I got hit with this all week. Well, the prevailing wage is racist. I'm sure you've heard this. It was set up back in the 30s to keep black people from getting those jobs in New York and Philadelphia, and that's what it was really about. It wasn't really about helping workers.
No, not at all. Look, there's Davis-Bacon sets the established wages in an area regardless of the ethnicity makeup of the workforce. What it does prevent is an employer who can take a group of workers that perhaps doesn't have the ability to stand up for themselves and says, look, this is the wages that prevail in this local community. You're entitled to it. The joke of hearing folks like the ABC or others talk about this program is they use the Davis-Bacon projects that their contractors secure, and non-union contractors do get federally prevailing wage work. They hold those jobs out as the carrots to provide to their workers who often have to go back to private jobs at substandard wages and conditions. So they need to circulate that amongst their existing crews to keep them happy. They know the deal.
Now, what's interesting is, you could almost see who was writing the emails that we've got. The ABC people saying, well, it artificially inflates wages, it's inefficient, it's all of these other things. And then some of the workers who chimed in said, look, I've worked in places where prevailing wage was supposed to be part of the deal, but it never trickled down to us. And one of the other things that I think the vice president talked about is enforcement, increasing the enforcement of ensuring that those wages actually do get to the people who they're supposed to.
Absolutely. And that's a large book of business for our locals, is helping those workers, not just our members, but any worker who's being abused with wage theft, misclassification, and other issues where contractors try and take advantage of them. And the new regulations and the update to Davis-Bacon here are going to allow us to help those workers a little easier than it is right now.
I want to bang through a couple of the other claims because I want to get your thoughts on them. I've given my thoughts. One of the arguments is that it reduces our ability to do more. We've inflated the cost of building contracts. In fact, one person told me, and I got to get your thoughts on this. He told me that if we did away with prevailing wage, it would cut building costs by 25%. That we could do 25% more building of schools and roads and bridges. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, just isn't so. There have been too many academic studies that have taken on this issue and looked at it in its totality and said that, and they've done this by looking at states, right? There's things called mini Davis-Bacon or state prevailing wage. And they looked to see if those costs adjusted for the fact that there's no prevailing wage in a state, prevailing wage in another state, adjust for cost of living. And guess what? Those states without prevailing wage don't get projects delivered any cheaper, don't get them delivered any more quickly, and certainly don't get them delivered any more effectively. Yeah. So these are talking points, but they can't be supported by academically reviewed studies.
But here, just the math. I mean, and look, I have basic, college math. I'm not completely devoid of being able to do basic numbers, but 25% seems like a fairly large number. And what I think we both know is in any building project, 25% is about the cost of labor. So if you're going to save 25% on a building project, does that mean labor is free? I mean, because I'm curious how you get to this 25. Now, I know what they mean. They mean we're going to cheat workers out of 25% of their wages, and they're going to work for 25% less. But this argument that this guy made was projects in general were going to be 25% cheaper.
Well, I think you're getting pretty close to the truth there, which is there is a certain group of contractors out there that would like to pay their workers nothing. But you're right. I mean, labor at most is 33% of the cost of a project. So a 25% savings on that would certainly not net you a 25% savings on the project. And again, there's just no credible studies out there to support that a cut in prevailing wage actually leads to lower costs for the project. It does lead to more money in the dollars of the pocket of the contractors that want to operate that way.
Well, no, what's interesting to me is I look at West Virginia, and I'm sure you've seen their governor, Republican Jim Justice, who not too long ago, after West Virginia passed the horrible right to work law and then went and repealed their prevailing wage laws, came out and said, we did both of those things. We were told this was going to be the panacea. The rivers were going to flow with gold and honey if we passed these things. And, well, it hasn't worked. It didn't bring in new jobs, didn't make the economy grow any better. All it really did was screw over the working people. Shouldn't that be the mantra going forward? That you look at West Virginia. They did everything the ABC and the Chamber of Commerce told them to do, and it didn't help working people. How about we try something else?
Yeah, you agreed. You couldn't find a better case study to show where eliminating prevailing wage did not raise area standards, did not help with the living conditions that the people in West Virginia work under. Let's look at the flip side of that, Rick. Michigan, right? Okay, it's early on, but if the ABC was to be believed, right, reinstating prevailing wage should have scared manufacturers, employers, and all sorts of folks away from a quote unquote prevailing wage state. Just the opposite is happening. Infusion of work, great demand for construction in Michigan. So couldn't be two more textbook examples of the benefits of prevailing wage.
Now, look, I'll probably never work on a prevailing wage job, and most people won't. And for me, the argument is it comes down to locality. I know that, and I've seen the studies, I'm sure as you have as well, that when you do away with prevailing wage laws, you end up losing your local craftspeople. The skilled craftspeople go on into other jobs that are paying, what they should be getting, what they earn. And you end up having transients come through, fly-by-night contractors come through and do shoddy work. And I've said 1,000 times, the school that they built down the road from my house where my kids sat in the classroom, I want that roof put on by somebody who lives in the neighborhood and whose kid is probably sitting next to mine, because I worry that this can be done in a shoddy way, because those fly-by-night folks will be gone. I want local people doing local work who have skin in the game. That to me seems like a really good reason why we promote this.
Absolutely. You said the right word, community. And that's what this is. And that's what Davis-Bacon supports. And it's not just the local journeyman craft workers, right? It supports the pipeline of apprenticeship, right? Davis-Bacon recognized bona fide real apprenticeship programs. Standards are a key part of enforcement for Davis-Bacon. That's the kind of thing that ensures a continuity, right, of opportunities, not just for the life of the project, but for that community going forward. You're going to have that pipeline of craft workers coming for the next generation. And that's what we're about.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Tim Driscoll, president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at the work that they do. I want to change this a little bit to get away from prevailing wage for a minute, because, look, I look at this as just one piece of what the Biden administration has done. And I think I've been saying this for a while. We're going to look back in the rearview mirror in about 10 years and go, this period was transformational and moving us in a new direction. And as I've been saying the last couple of days, anytime I see Larry Summers unhappy, that makes me happy, because it means maybe we're going in a way that isn't going to harm workers. But I look at this as a small part of moving us back towards reshoring manufacturing, investing in infrastructure, and more importantly, thinking about the working people who do those jobs and ensuring that the money that we spend, the tax dollars that we put out there, actually does trickle down to working people and helps communities. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Look, President Biden has said, and he has absolutely lived up to his word throughout this, that it's unions that built the middle class. His investments aren't investments that we have to wait years to see the benefits for. He's there making sure we're the ones growing our communities, whether it's the Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, all of the incentives in there to ensure that construction work is performed at the highest standards. That benefits immediately to the workers, right? That is not something where we're waiting for those above to let us filter through what gets passed through their hands and eventually to us. This is a direct investment in our industry and in our people. Couldn't ask for more out of this administration.
My friends on the right love to focus on the culture war stuff, on all of the divisive stuff, and I say, look, at the end of the day, as working people, we got to put off the red hats and the blue hats and get a hard hat so we can rebuild this country. And I believe that the way we reunite this country is to reunionize this country so that the wealth that we have does actually trickle down. The fantasy that we were sold when I was a kid growing up, that we give rich people all the money and it'll trickle down to us, hasn't played out. Maybe we go back to policies where we have the idea that if you do work hard and play by the rules, that you actually get ahead.
Yeah, look, agreed. That's what this country was founded on, right? As a principle that we're not about serfdom or waiting for our benefactors to bestow upon us anything. It's we get what we earn, right? We recognize that power concedes nothing without a demand, and unions are the vehicle for workers to express that in a responsible way. We know what it takes for our employers, and by our way, our signatory employers are our greatest partners. They're not just the folks who employ us, they're the folks who engage with us in training and providing benefits for our members. Those are the kind of partners we want. And that's what the Biden administration is empowering. It's saying to an employer, if you're responsible, if you're someone who wants to work with your workers to build a community, to build lives, then we want to help you succeed. And how that isn't something that everyone can embrace puzzles me.
I'm right there with you, Tim. I appreciate the time. I hope folks will check out your website, bacweb.org. The website will get links out on social media. Again, next we'll have to get you back again to talk about your wonderful apprenticeship programs and how folks can maybe get these prevailing wage jobs to help build the middle class of the future. But Tim Driscoll, I appreciate the time.
Love to do that. Thanks, Rick. Good seeing you again.
You as well. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with Tim? Do you agree with the ABC folks? It's wasteful spending? Or should we be using tax dollars to build communities up, to help workers make a good living? That's where I'm going. Back after this. Stick around.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the day that federal troops pushed Kelly's Industrial Army out of Washington, D.C. and across the Potomac River. The Army was a group of unemployed men who had come to the nation's capital to protest government inaction. The country was in the grip of an economic depression. The nation's agricultural regions in the South and Great Plains were also hit by a drought. Times were hard for American workers and families. The call had gone out across the nation for the unemployed to make their way to the doorstep of Congress. The goal was to petition for public infrastructure projects to put people back to work. Businessman Jacob Coxey had organized a March of the Unemployed from Ohio. Charles T. Kelly and his group came from California. They rode the rails and made it to Des Moines, Iowa, where they encamped. After a while, the local residents decided the unemployed group had outstayed their welcome. The Iowans provided lumber so the industrial army could build flatboats and be on their way. By the time Charles Kelly and his men made it to D.C., Coxey had already been sentenced to 20 days in jail for trespassing on the Capitol lawn. Yet unemployed men from across the country kept coming into the nation's capital. 1,200 men arrived from different points across the country. One of those in Kelly's group was a young author by the name of Jack London. London wrote of his experience, quote, "Across the wild and woolly West, clear from California, General Kelly and his heroes captured trains. But they fell down when they crossed the Missouri and went up against the effete East. The marchers' protests earned no help from Congress." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So real quick, got an email from George who, I think I have said this a couple of times and didn't, it's one of those things that just pops out without adding context to it. It's one of those things, and I sometimes do that, where I assume people know things that they don't. He says, Rick, I've heard you talk about Larry Summers and how it makes you happy when he is mad. Why? Good question. Why? Why would me being happy when Larry Summers is unhappy? Understand, Larry Summers, for those who don't know, Larry Summers was the Deputy Secretary of the Treasurer and Treasury Secretary under Clinton. He was also the National Economic Council Director under Obama. He has been at the heart of a lot of bad economic decisions. He is one of the king neoliberals who has pushed the Democrats in this corporate light, Republican light direction. And recently he did a panel at the Peterson Institute. And anytime I hear Peterson Institute, immediately I go, well, I know who's funding that. I know the wealth class will be thrilled to hear whatever comes out of this, because working people never get a fair shake there. But he was railing against the Biden policies in that it was going to raise wages. So can you see maybe a little bit why I would be, happy when he's mad? Because the reality is this is one of the guys who was responsible for part of the reason that wages have been stagnant for 40 plus years. The reason that the working class of this country has been robbed for the last 40 years. Middle 70s forward, it's been bad after bad for working people. Finally, someone's talking about, hey, how do we raise wages? How do we get families more income? How do we talk about being a worker first, instead of the DLC Republican idea of we're all consumers and that's all that matters. Speaking of workers, had a caller yesterday claimed no one wants to work. Nobody wants to work, Rick. Nobody. Well, today Bloomberg News. This could have worked out perfectly. Bloomberg News reported that everyone wants to work at UPS. The Teamsters got a deal. That deal is pretty good. I mean, there's some folks around the edges who aren't overly happy, but for the most part, $30 billion in new money over the next 5 years, contracts going to working people. That's not chump change. And as I said the other day, according to Indeed.com, 50% increase in the number of searches of people looking for UPS or United Parcel Service. And it's one of those things that makes you go, maybe, I don't know, maybe if you pay people, maybe if you pay them a good wage with good benefits and retirement and health security, give them a little job security, you won't have any problems. And I think back to, look, I started in the freight industry back in the late 80s. Working for a freight company is not easy. You're outside all the time, winter, summer, especially in the cold. I started in Cleveland, so you were literally freezing And you didn't do it because, gee, I just love freezing my behind off. I love when my feet are like icicles, and I love when my fingers burn. Yeah, I just love that. No, you did it because really superior wages. And I go back to, when I started, started rate was about $15 an hour, top rate a little over 18, or in today's money, you're talking UPS money. You're talking $49 an hour at the top rate. Back then, you had a standard of living as a working person where you could afford a house, you could afford a car, you could afford, to put food on the table. You could afford to do a lot of stuff and save for retirement and believe that you had a future. I was watching this video of a guy saying, look, the people who are comparing our generations to past generations, and he was going through the numbers. He's saying, look, college tuition for you was a couple $100. For me, I got to take out $40,000. A new car for you may have been, $3,000 or $4,000. For me, it's $50,000. You want to buy a house in my neighborhood? It's $400,000 or $500,000 where maybe you paid $100,000. There's a huge difference. And the number and the number of things that this guy went through saying, look, we've been saddled with massive debt just to get where you were able to get. And the number that I saw, again, we talk about the American dream. The number that I saw of, by the time you talked about college debt, time you talked about a car, a home, all of this stuff, the debt ratios that are taken out by different generations. This number, this personal finance club came up with, a calculus. And they said for, someone who, graduated college in 1973, they were able to pay off all their debts in 11 years. That's college, that's a new car, that's a new house, they because of the income that they earned. Someone who graduates in 2023, it's going to take them 43 years to pay off the same level of debt with even just the same income. And for me, I look at this as what's happened over the years is workers have lost bargaining power. Their wages have stagnated and fallen behind, which is why so many people were freaking out going, what? UPS they're going to pay their workers $49 an hour? You go, yeah. How much do you think you're worth? And this is the thing. This is the weird thing, because Liz Schuler, president of the AFL-CIO, tweeted this note out. And the note, a picture of this note, and you can see it on Twitter. To all employees, the note says, you never, with never capitalized and underlined, for any, capitalized and underlined, never for any reason discuss your pay rate with another employee. Your pay is between you and boss and no one else. No exceptions ever. Now understand, that's illegal to say that. But I have heard places where if you talk about your salaries, they'll fire you. Now, what recourse do you have? Well, you'll get to file for unemployment and all that stuff. Another reason to have a union. Now, this is the important part. Let me get to this. The Teamsters put their contract right out there online for everyone to see. You know how much that brown guy, the brown package guy makes. You know what his benefits are, because the number around, you're making $170,000 a year. Yep. Between wages and benefits and all that. Yeah, right about that. A little bit of overtime, sure. It's all printed right there in black and white. An employer who does this says, if you talk about wages to anybody, you talk about how little I'm paying you, well, you'll see, there'll be problems. That's someone that you should immediately be organizing against. Because I've got a contract book on my desk. Keep it on my desk all the time. It says the wages, hours, says everything. It's written down, black and white, for everyone to see. Totally transparent. Why doesn't every worker want that? Why wouldn't every person want to make sure that they weren't being cheated? I know what the answer is. I'm going to make my own deal, and I'm going to make a better deal than the next guy. And that's how they play it. Because if you believe that, you're getting screwed. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back after this.
Iconic Lahaina, a paradise lost.
Devastation in Maui after deadly wildfire outbreak. Record ocean heat wreaking havoc on marine life. Plus,
there's no national treasure, none that is grander than the Grand Canyon.
The president protects iconic public lands from uranium mining.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
This is ridiculous to talk about a climate emergency when we have a border emergency that is an existential threat right now.
Hey, newsflash, Tim Scott. Climate change is an existential threat right now, and it's killing American citizens. Do you give a damn? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, boy, that Tim Scott really irritates me today for some reason, especially with this news out of Maui.
Yes, it's heartbreaking news in Hawaii. Several fast-moving, deadly wildfires on Maui and the Big Island triggered mandatory evacuations and knocked out power, communications, and critical infrastructure, fueled by low humidity, dried-out vegetation, and intense winds from a distant hurricane. In western Maui, at least 36 people were killed in a massive fire that destroyed much of the historic town of Lahaina. Some residents were forced into the ocean to escape the flames. Experts say the Hawaiian Islands have become increasingly prone to wildfires due to more frequent drought conditions and non-native vegetation. Climate change is increasing vegetation dryness in many parts of the world.
Just heartbreaking news. Last I checked, there were nearly 300 structures destroyed in Lahaina.
In other news, it is now official. The numbers are in, and yes, July 2023 was Earth's hottest month by an unusually wide margin since record-keeping began in the mid-1800s.
You mean this July?
Yes.
Right now?
Yes.
I mean, someone ought to tell Tim Scott.
All that heat energy is fueling new extreme weather disasters. The United States has now seen a record 15 separate billion-dollar weather disasters so far this year.
This year?
Those are disasters causing more than $1 billion each in damages. NOAA says it's the most mega disasters in the first 7 months of any year since they began tracking it in 1980, mostly from extreme heat and devastating floods. Scientists say 2023 is virtually certain now to take the top spot as the hottest year ever recorded, blowing past the previous hottest year of 2016.
Yeah, but Joe Biden hasn't been to the border lately.
Scientists are freaking out a bit about the oceans hitting new record temperatures globally, which is in turn fueling extreme weather and disrupting marine life. In Florida, coral restoration groups are in emergency rescue mode, trying to save the state's last remaining corals from historic bleaching caused by the abnormally hot temperatures. NOAA this week announced a new extreme marine heat wave is brewing off the coasts of Oregon and Washington, fueling toxic algae blooms with water temperatures nearly 9 degrees hotter than normal. The oceans are a vital planetary climate regulator, soaking up heat from man-made global warming. Warmer water fuels more intense storms and storm surges and reduces the ocean's ability to absorb CO2 from humanity's burning of fossil fuels. In South America, one of the most extreme heat events ever recorded has shattered records. It's midwinter, but temperatures have hit 95 degrees and higher in many locations, including at elevations higher than 4,000 feet in the Andes Mountains.
95 degrees at 4,000 feet in the Andes Mountains in winter?
Yes.
Oh.
But some good news also in South America. 8 Amazon rainforest nations this week adopted a wide-ranging pact to protect the world's largest rainforest and urged developed countries to do more to stop its massive destruction. But the agreement fell short of a commitment to completely halt deforestation by 2030.
Wow, seems like a lot of bad stuff is going on right here, right now.
Finally, some great news. President Biden this week designated the lands surrounding Grand Canyon National Park as a new national monument, permanently protecting nearly 1 million acres of lands sacred to Native American tribes from new mining and development, although existing mine operations will continue. Native American tribes and conservationists say the designation is critical to protect water resources in the region, a region grappling with abandoned uranium mines contaminating groundwater. President Biden Biden called the Grand Canyon the birthright of every American and focused on the long-term sustainable economic benefits to the state's economy.
Growing the tourism economy that already accounts for 11% of all Arizona jobs. Folks, preserving these lands is good not only for Arizona, but for the planet. It's good for the economy. It's good for the soul of the nation.
Yeah, but he hasn't gone down to the border like Tim Scott to stare at the water and pretend he gives a damn. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the Writers Guild, they've been on strike, I think about 102 days now is the number that's being thrown out there. And the Screen Actors, it's coming up on a month that they've been on strike, been on the picket line. And reports are that there was some talk, I guess, with the Writers Guild. No movement from what I've been told. In fact, from what I hear, probably not going to be for a while. That's why I've asked Nikki Isanek to come talk with me. Nikki is the president of SAG-AFTRA in Philadelphia. Yes, there is a SAG-AFTRA outside of Hollywood and all across the country, important places for workers to be. Nikki, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So am I getting this right? Are the numbers right? 102 days for the Writers Guild, coming up on a month for the Screen Actors? About right?
That's exactly right.
And why? Why are we here? I want to get your thoughts on this. Why are you guys on the line?
So I see it as a multi-tiered issue. I think the first problem is that wages aren't keeping up with the basic cost of inflation. So the proposed raise that we were offered would have me making less money 3 years from now than I made 3 years ago. So that makes no sense. People can't afford to live. Most of us are working to be middle-class people. So that's the first issue. There's also, with the evolution of AI and technology, some of our actors were offered less than 1 day's pay to be scanned to use their image and likeness forever without their consent in perpetuity. And that's just a non-starter. Also, the streaming residual structure is broken. It doesn't represent a modern life. It just needs to be completely restructured and start over again. It's not the world that we live in. So it's an existential crisis, and it's also wages and working conditions. It's unsustainable. Yeah,
it always comes back down to wages, hours, conditions. And look, nobody ever wants to go on strike, but I see this as you don't have a choice. I mean, you were backed into, there was no choice in this. I always say strikes are the last arrow in the quiver. This was the only arrow in the quiver as far as I'm concerned, because of the point that you made a second ago. This idea that they want to scan your likeness and then just use you whenever they feel, however they feel, forever, and you get one whopping day's pay for that.
Right, and it's like your grandkids could see your AI that you did 100 years ago that you made 1 day of money for in 2023. It's ridiculous.
So what I've been saying, and you can help me along if you think this is accurate, because a lot of this is going to be coming. This is in my view, the first battle, the front lines of the AI class war. And the reason I think all of us should be paying attention is if you lose this, if you lose the right to be yourself and to not have your image used by someone forever, if you lose the right to have writers write scripts and not have the kind of things that I've heard, it's going to be that much easier for them to do it to everybody else in every other industry. So I'm looking to your industry right now as, that canary in the coal mine kind of thing, that first real battle that everyone should be concerned about.
It really is. Besides literally sucking the life out of what we do and replacing us with robots, it has the capacity to, if there are no parameters on this, and quick, that it could decimate many different industries and just remove people.
Because I look at this, and again, as someone who spent my lifetime in the trucking industry, automation is going to decimate that industry. AI is going to decimate, you name it, coming forward. And if we don't push back, look, I'm not a Luddite, not yet, but there's got to be some rules. And as I've been telling people, this is the reason right now they should be joining and forming unions, if for no other reason than to push back on what is coming, a tsunami of job losses, I fear.
That's right. It's the OK Corral right now, and this is a labor issue. It's a labor issue for us. It's a labor issue for the country. And it's just amazing how quickly things are evolving. So there's a real need. It's not coming, it's here.
Yeah.
And there's a need to put real rules on that yesterday.
Now, you being the president of SAG-AFTRA in Philadelphia, a lot of people think, when they think actors, they think Hollywood. There are SAG-AFTRA local unions all across this country who represent people who do lots of things. What do your members do in the Philadelphia area?
So I love Hollywood. I think it's wonderful. Our high-profile actors that live in that region have been supportive. They've been donating to our emergency relief funds. I love New Yorkers. I work in the area also. But it comes as a surprise, and this is a real educational opportunity for the country, to some people, that there are 23 distinct regions outside of New York and LA that are mid and small size locals. And we do what everybody else does. It's sometimes a bit less high profile. But a lot of us are the journeyman actors. We are hardworking people who just want a fair day's wage for a hard day's work. We are the people that fill up this industry in other ways. So outside of Hollywood, we have the same jobs. We have less high profile stars. But in our region, we have just over 3,000 people that are SAG-AFTRA members, and we work the same jobs.
Yeah, and look, I had someone explain it to me. You do commercials, you do, all kinds of, all kind of voice work, all kinds of stuff that we don't really even think of. And one person explained to me that something that's already been lost, and maybe you can help me with this. These training videos that, especially the anti-union stuff that you see for Walmart or for Home Depot or any of these big multinational corporations who want to browbeat their employees about how bad unions are. They used to hire actors to do that. And what was interesting is they actually had, I think, as it was explained to me, I think it was Lowe's had actually union actors doing the anti-union video. Now all that's been evidently replaced by AI already, from what I've been told.
Yeah, I have seen many of the AI spots. I can still tell the difference, but they're getting good. It is starting to evolve. We really need a stop sign on that. One thing that we've been doing in this region is partnering with our AFL-CIO, and they have been fantastic about what videos and what opportunities and what joint creative efforts we can have to keep union jobs in-house, from political ads or just the idea that for every other union job in every other industry, there are many different performer union jobs that we can keep in-house. And that's just sort of one way that let's hold on to what we got. And make sure that we keep our union jobs around here. So they've been a great partner with us.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to be keeping jobs. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Nikki Izanik. She's president of SAG-AFTRA in Philadelphia. You can check out their website. That's out there now, sagaftrastrike.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. So, I mean, community-wise, you've got to be getting a lot of support. At least I hope you are, because, as I said, I see this as the front line of the class war in this moment. What kind of support you guys have been getting?
So it's been just a revolutionary experience. So Philly is a union town, but I had no idea. So on day one, I had already had a meeting planned with our local AFL-CIO. I showed up. We coincidentally ended up being on strike because I've been meeting with them. We said, let's plan a rally. We reached out. We borrowed everything from like their banner to their microphone. They sent us to the permitting person, and we just started there. They said, like I said, this is my first rodeo, and they walked me through it. Ever since then, it's been anything we need. Our WGA people, we've been working in solidarity with them since the beginning of their strike. We helped shut down a Ridley Scott production in the region on day two. And that was just fantastic. There's just unprecedented solidarity with our brother and sister unions. The musicians union has come out, IATSE, anybody we've ever asked anything of, they've over-delivered. It's been just really inspiring.
No, because I think everyone understands just how important this fight is. So how can I help? How can others help in this? Because, as I've laid this out, I think everyone should be concerned about this. I think everyone should be on board with this, because this is, I believe, that first battle. And if we can maybe push back hard enough here, maybe it'll be easier down the road for everyone else. So how can folks help?
Well, from region to region, we've been taking solidarity photos and having rallies. We just had one in Atlantic City the other day, which is also part of the local. Part of it is, if you can give, please give. The SAG-AFTRA Emergency Relief Fund is collecting money. If you can't, anybody can educate, right? So if you're aware of our issues, you understand that it's a labor issue. And in this narrative, to be able to educate others that, maybe if the stereotype is that this is represented one sort of way, you can say, well, maybe not really. Let me explain to you what's going on. This is a labor issue. And I think educating each other is the best line of defense here, because it's really being misrepresented by people that are in a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And it's important from person to person to really stand strong together.
What's the biggest misconception? What's that myth that's been thrown out at you that isn't accurate?
I would say, so I'm from Philly, and it's being portrayed as a fancy pants people problem. And it's not. This isn't just a Hollywood thing. This isn't about all of the people complaining because they don't make enough money and they're making this highfalutin lifestyle with their yachts. We're not those people. Most of us are struggling just to get to the middle class. We're not higher than middle class struggling to be rich. We're struggling to get middle class. And $26,000 a year is not made by 87% of our members. And that's just under what it takes to qualify for health care. So for a lot of people, that would be considered part-time income, but people, this is their full-time life. So it's just a real basic struggle.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people that I've talked to, well, why does Tom Cruise need this or that? He's got agents to do all this stuff. And you go, no. It's not the Tom Cruises or the big name actors. It's everyone else that you don't know their names in, film after film. Those are the folks who are struggling to make ends meet. That their images are the ones that are important. And that's why we need to be fighting this. At least that's my thought.
That's exactly right. And a lot of those higher profile people have people negotiating on their behalf. This is about the journeyman actors for many of us, because we're not negotiating above scale. A lot of us are just, whatever the scale is, that's what we're going to work for. So it's wonderful that they're also fighting for us, and that they're willing to stand in solidarity when really their contracts are negotiated typically at a much higher rate.
Yeah, I wish you the best. I hope this is short, but I fear this is going to be a long one. At least that's what I'm the sense I'm getting, especially since right at the beginning on the Writers Guild side, there was a report that one of the executives said, we're going to make them lose their homes and go bankrupt and all kinds of other horrible things. I got to think the theater, the studios are thinking the same way.
Yeah, I think that they are. And, maybe if you're used to a comfortable life and have a certain income, you think that that'll be an easy thing. But we're performers. Many of us, if not most of us, are used to the struggle, right? You can't starve us out. Yeah. We've been resilient in figuring out other things and ways to survive for a very long time. So the idea that that's where their mind is representative of how far apart we are.
No, that's an incredible answer. One day stronger, one day longer. Nikki, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Hope folks will take a look at the website, sagaftrastrike.org. We'll get links out on social media. Nikki Eisenach, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you so much.
Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, I came across this video today that just blew my mind. And it's one of those things that makes me go, I've taken a lot of hits from people about talking about religion and how crazy some of it has gotten. And, it's one of those things where I look at some of this stuff and wonder, how is it that people are willing and sit through some of this. So I got to play this video that I came across on TikTok. It's kind of crazy that this is the world where some religion has gone.
What are you coming up here to do? You want to come take over the service? Huh? What do you want? What?
I just want a prayer.
Get out of here.
Can I get a little grace?
No, you can't. No, you get out of here. Get him out of here. Drag this bozo out.
That's the pastor.
Pull him out. Hey, help him out. Get him out.
That's the man of God.
And you know what? If anybody wants to come up here and take over the service, we'll throw you out of here, buddy. This church is not a free-for-all. This isn't an open mic. This isn't a karaoke bar. Okay? I'm the man of God here. I meet the qualifications. I run this church. And if you don't like it, then get out. This is not some church where every first-time visitor and brand-new believer and people who've never even read the Bible are going to come up and take over the service. Not happening. Okay? If you want that kind of watered-down leadership, go to some house church with your Amish buddies and sit around the coffee table with your coffee clatch. This is a New Testament church. We have a bishop here. We have an overseer here. Like it or lump it. And if you don't like it, feel free to get up and leave the service at any time. Or 50% of people walk out. I don't care. Because you know what? I'm not going to pastor a oneness cult. Amen. I'm not going to pastor a Pentecostal church. I'm the pastor of a Baptist church. Amen. And if you're not a Baptist, then get out. Amen.
I got to tell you, I saw this. I had to play this. This is one of those things where you go, who in their right mind is going to sit through that? Who in their right mind is going to go to the convenience store front church, in the mall to listen to that guy? I'm the man. I'm the man. It's my church. I'm me. Wow. And all the guy wanted to do was someone to pray for him, to pray with him. And this is supposed to be what they're about. No. It's about the ego. It's about the warrior. I saw a thing. I got a thing online today of Christian wear so that you could show your faith at the gym. This is how far religion has gone, and Jesus is buff. I mean, Jesus is rocking some guns, man. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, what is wrong with people? This is a guy Jesus would have thrown out of the church. This is a guy that Jesus probably would have flipped over a table to go after. And for me, this is the weird world that we're in. And this is why, I keep coming back to this place of community, and churches used to be that place. Now, what was frightening to me in that video, and I don't know if you heard it because I watched it like 6 times, is the people who were sitting in that congregation listening to this guy throw a temper tantrum about how it's all about him. He's the pastor. He's in charge. Yeah, I'm me, I. And they're sitting there going, amen. I'm the man of God, he says. I got to tell you, any sane, rational person should have been heading for the door. Any sane, rational person would have been going, we're gathering the sheep and we're getting the flock out of here. That's a biblical reference because, Jesus was with the sheep and all that. I'm sure you got that. No, I'm concerned about where we are. I grew up in the Catholic Church at a time when it was about peace and social justice. Priests walked picket lines. You would have seen the priest in our parish out there with the SAG-AFTRA workers. You would have seen them out there with the steel workers. You would have seen them out there blessing the workers and on the side of righteousness and good. Now it's all about the greed. It's all about the prosperity gospel and the warrior Jesus. I mean, I actually tweeted it out. Buff Jesus. And it's, of course, buff Jesus is very white. And the liberties that are taken in rewriting the book is quite remarkable. That guy who lost his mind should never be in front of the congregation. In fact, he should be confessing his sins, vanity, and all of that. But I know, no, he's a man of God. He took the online course. Back in the old days, it had been correspondence. You get those on the back of the matchbook. Now it's these online universities that, you take a couple of classes, you're now you're a minister. In fact, I don't even think you need to take classes to be a minister, to be honest. And this is the frightening part of this, because these folks gain followers. And those followers then go out into social media and spew nonsense. This is what's concerning to me, because what the right has done masterfully is they've taken over the churches. The left ceded religion to the right. I remember when Sam Alito was being confirmed for the Supreme Court, and they were having Justice Sunday, where with the technology of the day, which is really impressive, they linked up 1,000 churches. They heavily went after the churches so that they could promote we're going to save the babies. And what's interesting to me, really, honestly and truthfully interesting to me, is all of those churches who are like, we're going to save the babies. We're going to go out and march in front of abortion clinics. We're going to go out and do all this work to make sure that the babies are born. I haven't seen one of them pushing any politicians to say, hey, you know what? Healthcare. Those babies are going to need healthcare. Those babies are going to need to be fed. Those babies are going to need childcare so mom or dad or mom can go off to work. We're going to need housing and you name it. We're going to force these kids to be born. We got to take care of them. I haven't seen any of that. What I have seen out of religion is that kind of craziness. And I sat there and I just watched it and I'm going, is this where we are? And sadly, the answer's, yeah, it's where we are. So the question, because there are good, decent people of faith, and I've talked about this, I've known them. How do you bring it back from the brink? How do we bring this back? And look, you folks on the left, you've got to speak up, and not by just words, but by actions. See, I'm an action guy. I don't profess my faith. I don't come out and wear religiosity on my sleeve. Talk about how we can make lives better, because it was that upbringing. It was all those years in church of, hey, you know what? We do need to take care of the least of us. We are our brother's keeper. It is about the Sermon on the Mount, which evidently today, I don't know if you've heard, there are these kind of crazy, religious groups who think, Jesus was too weak. We need tough Jesus, tough love Jesus. If you're hungry, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. See, the new Jesus would have said, hey, you deadbeats, no loaves and fishes. Get a job. That's what new Jesus would say. Or at least that's what they would have us believe. And again, my fear is crazy is getting so much attention. In fact, there's part of me that actually regrets playing that, because I've given that guy some notoriety. But I hope for all the wrong reasons. I hope people look at that with disgust. And I hope all those people never come back. I hope there's some sanity there. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the day that federal troops pushed Kelly's Industrial Army out of Washington, D.C. and across the Potomac River. The Army was a group of unemployed men who had come to the nation's capital to protest government inaction. The country was in the grip of an economic depression. The nation's agricultural regions in the South and Great Plains were also hit by a drought. Times were hard for American workers and families. The call had gone out across the nation for the unemployed to make their way to the doorstep of Congress. The goal was to petition for public infrastructure projects to put people back to work. Businessman Jacob Coxey had organized a March of the Unemployed from Ohio. Charles T. Kelly and his group came from California. They rode the rails and made it to Des Moines, Iowa, where they encamped. After a while, the local residents decided the unemployed group had outstayed their welcome. The Iowans provided lumber so the Industrial Army could build flatboats and be on their way. By the time Charles Kelly and his men made it to D.C., Coxey had already been sentenced to 20 days in jail for trespassing on the Capitol lawn. Yet unemployed men from across the country kept coming into the nation's capital. 1,200 men arrived from different points across the country. One of those in Kelly's group was a young author by the name of Jack London. London wrote of his experience, quote, "Across the wild and woolly West, clear from California, General Kelly and his heroes captured trains. But they fell down when they crossed the Missouri and went up against the effete East. The marchers' protests earned no help from Congress." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
How about a little bit of good news for a change? Specifically, good news about news. The demise of local newspapers has been a very depressing story in the last few years, with several thousand of them gobbled up by Wall Street profiteers. Those money powers loot the publication's assets, then callously shut down each community's paper or reduces them to empty news shells. So that's that. Local print journalism is passé, right? Wrong. High-spirited, community-minded subscribers in places like Glen Rose, Texas, Hamburg, Iowa, Portland, Maine, and International Falls, Minnesota, are humming an upbeat tune of regeneration that could be titled, "Not Dead Yet." In Maine, for example, 5 of the state's 6 daily papers and 17 weeklies were sinking under the ownership of an investment group. But all were recently bought by the National Trust for Local News, a nonprofit started 2 years ago. The trust is turning each publication over to local nonprofit owners and helping them find ways to become sustainable. Another new effort called Cherry Road Media has bought 77 rural papers in 17 states, most from the predatory Gannett conglomerate that wanted to dump them. Cherry Road's business plan is simple, old-time genius. Return editorial decision-making to local people and journalists who know the town. Be an active presence and participant in community affairs. Make the locals responsible for sustaining their town's paper and, most important, reinvest profits in real local journalism that advances democracy. This is Jim Hightower saying, in both of these new initiatives, the foremost mission is to serve the common good of the communities, not to pad the wealth of a few distant financiers. To learn more about these models and how you might implement something similar in your town, contact Institute for Rural Journalism, ruraljournalism.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Politico reported that Ron DeSantis was in Iowa and taking a verbal tongue lashing. In fact, they were chanting Ron DeFascist and putting fingers. Evidently, they had somebody with a megaphone calling him Ron DeFascist and putting fingers. Yeah. Also, Ron DeSantis' campaign made news as they blocked a local journalist from coming into an event. The good folks over at Starting Line in Iowa, they're one of the career news groups. Guy signed up, guy had his press pass, had all the information. He was told, nope, you can't come in. It was a private event because you're going to cover our words accurately. And, well, we can't have that. Can't have that. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do you make of this? Do you think this is going to be what we see all campaign season? No, you don't. You don't believe what we believe. No journalists allowed.
Well, I think there's several things. They chanted Ron defascist and then pudding fingers. What does that mean?
I don't actually know. I thought it was.
I don't know. But it was a disruption this time. So far as it's reported, it's a disruption by the left is what they're reporting, meaning Democrats, or it could be to the left group, who knows. And then the reporter thing, this happens in campaigns where, all of a sudden a reporter's not allowed in. It makes a bigger news story than if you just, allowed them to be there. So I think we're going to see disruption. I think you're going to see it, with the candidates' events. With Biden, I think you're going to see it with Republicans. It's going to heat up, and it's going to be out there. There are going to be hecklers.
Yeah, the pudding fingers thing I just looked up was a Trump ad. I forgot all about this.
I didn't remember that.
It was a Trump ad that showed a guy sticking 3 fingers in his mouth. It wasn't DeSantis, and the words were, DeSantis loves sticking his fingers where they don't belong. DeSantis has his dirty fingers all over senior entitlements, and it's Trump attacking DeSantis for going after Social Security. So yeah, that's where pudding fingers comes from. Now that makes a little bit more sense. It's something that Trump did, and this is going to be an interesting thing because the Trump supporters are destroyers, man. There isn't going to be a candidate who isn't going to be heckled or anything.
Oh, sure.
Going forward.
Well, the whole campaign is going to be. We were talking about this tonight. I was at a class reunion, for our high school, and of course, people came up to me and tell me, what do you think? I'm like, what do you think? That's what I told them. I want to hear what you think. I don't care what I think. And I think everybody tonight, just one way or the other, no matter who they liked or didn't like, just they have fatigue already. There's fatigue.
No, and this is what I had said back in 2011. If you remember the Scott Walker recall,
right.
What happened there is Republicans learned a lesson. They can fatigue voters. They can throw all kinds of stuff at them, robocalls and all kinds of stuff, and you can get people to want to tune out. And I think that's a huge part of what we're seeing.
Well, fatigued voter, and I learned this in my campaigns. As you know, I ran for 24 years, and I had one or two opponents who got pretty smart about this, and they did everything under the sun. It just became such a negative barrage, and the whole purpose was to turn off the independent voters because my district that I represented was majority Democrat. Now, that didn't hurt me because we had a nice union vote and we had a nice Democrat vote. But technically, in a district like I represented, if you could turn off the independents, get them disgusted, they don't like either side, they stay away, then your base is there. It just so happened I split enough of his Democrat base to win. But in this campaign, I thought this, I could be, tell me if I'm wrong, Rick, in this campaign, Donald Trump is toxic with the independents anyway. So if independents get just so frustrated, it's like, this one, and they stay away from the polls, enough of them, you've still got a pretty tight split between Biden and Trump. The Biden loyalists and the Trump loyalists, I think.
No, this is what I've said from the beginning. I think if it does come down, and I think it's going to be Trump and Biden. I know you don't think Trump's going to be there, but I think it's going to be Trump and Biden. If I had to put money on it, I'm going to go with Biden because I don't see Trump getting new voters. I think he is. I don't think there's a new way for him to spin any policy, to spin any statement. I think people are either love him or hate him. I don't see any middle ground there. Whereas with Biden, I still see a little bit of middle ground where he's doing some good work that, moderate, independents, moderate Republicans are going to go, hey, this is good for the economy. I can see myself going there. For instance, the prevailing wage thing that they did on Tuesday. I think that's huge for the building trades. A lot of their members are Republican voters. That is a huge thing to get them to go, hey, this guy's going to help me.
What about Manchin? If he became third party, who would that cut into, I wonder?
That's a good question. I mean, for the presidential election, nobody, because Biden's not going to win West Virginia.
No, I mean,
do you see any scenario where Biden wins West Virginia?
No, none.
Yeah, so I see him as irrelevant unless it comes down to, a 50-49, or what they're three independents, two independents now. So what a 49-48, 3. No, that's whatever. It comes down to where his vote is the tiebreaker.
That would make the Electoral College interesting.
Yeah, no, that I got to work on my math. No, but what I see that as is the only way I see him helping or hurting is if the Senate's up for grabs, because I don't see him running for president. I know he's been toying with it. I just don't see it. I don't. What do you think? I'm going to spin that back to you.
I don't think Manchin will, but if he did, and he was a third-party guy, that would make it pretty fascinating.
No. We'll see. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst. I got to get your thoughts on this this statement that the president made on China. He said that China's in trouble. They're a ticking bomb, were his words. He said they've got some problems, and that's not good because when bad folks have problems, they do bad things. Now this is after in June he called Xi Jinping a dictator, which that didn't go well. Thoughts on that kind of rhetoric?
Well, he's saying because of the economic woes, and he did say it is a ticking bomb in many cases, and it's the economic challenges because of weak growth. So, when I look at it, and he says China's in trouble and they've got problems, and he did. He said when bad folks have problems, they do bad things. And of course, I think they are bad folks. Not the people, but the government. And he said that. Now he did say he didn't want to hurt China, and he wanted a rational relationship with the country itself. But yes, he did. He did call them a dictator. Now, I'm probably a really bad person to ask the question you asked because I just can't stand the Chinese government. And I think that no matter what we've done to appease them, they then say, oh, that's good, and we're going to step on you.
Yeah.
So I don't see, Biden not cozying up to them as a negative at this point in time, whatsoever. In fact, maybe China will eventually respond to want to make some type of potential deals with us because we're not, yielding to them. Joe Biden kept Trump's tariffs, which, again, what did we hear when Trump did the tariffs? Oh, this is the end of this and that. Oh, we can't survive with Trump doing this. And he kept them, and Joe Biden kept them. And I think that was a smart move, for it. Now, also, this week, President Biden signed an executive order that prohibits some new investment in China. And that's in the sense of technologies, computer chips, AI, et cetera. So, I don't know. I don't view it as a wrong statement. I don't view it as too combative.
I think it's freaking awesome.
Strategy for do it. So, I'm personally happy with it. Like I said, I'm probably the wrong person for people to ask because I'm a hawk on it. I think the only thing they understand is what he did today.
No, absolutely, 100%. I'm all in favor of this, and this is why the reason I bring this up is you brought up Trump and the tariffs, you brought up Trump and a lot of the tough talk. This is, this isn't the kind of outrageous tough talk, but this is hardline talk with a policy agenda, with a direction. With some planning in this, saying, look, we're gonna bring sensitive technologies back. We're gonna ensure that chips and cyber stuff, all that stuff is gonna be done here. We're gonna start protecting U.S. interests in these places. And oh, by the way, we're gonna reshore manufacturing. And the reason I bring this up is I don't know if you saw the statement by the BYD, Build Your Dreams. The largest car dealer in China, saying, it's now time for the Chinese brands. We're going to go after those old legends. And that what they mean is us. So this idea that we're starting a trade war, you go, no, we've been in a trade war for decades, and we've been losing. And finally, someone has stepped up and said, we're going to fight back.
Right. We gave permanent trade status. Every modern day president, every one of them. And I remember Obama and Romney. During the campaign, Obama and Romney out-China'd each other. Yep. No, I'm going to do this to China. No, you're going to do that. I'm going to do more. They out-China'd each other. George Bush, you go back to Bill Clinton, the permanent trade status. The presidents said one thing and then just felt they were the world president. That's what I seriously believe that. Plus all the mega international companies breathing down everybody's throats. They were in and out of our office like a revolving door. And then along came Trump. Now, other things Trump messed up, NATO, the Iran nuke deal. But when it came to China, he started a path. Now, I think Biden is following through better because Biden does hold tough, strong talk. It's okay to say what he's saying. But then, we still send, for what it's worth, we send, Blinken makes an outreach to China to continue to, quote, talk. And that's okay.
No, you got to talk to them. And look, I don't want to see them collapse because, the stories I'm hearing coming out of there that they're in a deflationary period, which is dangerous for the world. And, I've got friends going, how can they sell, a tool set for $3 and free shipping because they're in a deflationary period. Right. They're just trying to sell off whatever they can get to keep people working because they don't want to end up in a depression.
Also in a country with over 1.2 and some billion people, you sure don't want people sitting around.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Now I got to get to the big topic of the day. The judge, the U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, the protective order, good, bad, thoughts, anything?
Well, this one's going to be tough because, it's going to go on and on. Trump's going to say, certain things. Of course, the judge has issued a protective order, in when it applies to, what we're going to call, interference. And it will, limit the use of sensitive material. Now, anything said here and there, because the special prosecutor came and said, well, Trump was basically throwing out these threats, which then would go against, witnesses. But what the judge is saying today is that to limit the use and the disclosure of sensitive material as they go forward. And so they've imposed a kind of restrictive set of restrictions, and probably more narrow than the prosecutors had sought originally. Probably more narrow than what they want. Now, Trump's legal team argued only sensitive information should be kept under wraps, but the judge sided with the Smith on the details. The devil's in the details, including the request that all the recordings and the reports they have of witness testimony should be considered sensitive information. So the judge went with that. I think that's a big deal. She also gave the government a lot of discretion to decide. This is important too. She gave the government discretion to decide which records should be considered sensitive and restricted. So guess what? If I was Smith, they're all going to be.
Yeah, no, because I think she's right. You don't want this tried in the court of public opinion. You want it tried in the courtroom.
Now, there's surrogates out there too. Now, Trump cannot transmit or through the lawyer sensitive information, but they guess. They'll guess certain things. And so surrogates are going to go out there, and then, you really can't track down the surrogates or what's said on TikTok or, whatever.
Yeah, but it's still not the campaign. It's still not Trump. So I guess the question then becomes, do you see a point at which Trump does what Trump does and push the envelope? Do you see a point where they lock him up?
Well, no, they won't lock him up, but he'll push the envelope. He's going to do it. He doesn't listen to his lawyers. He's going to push the envelope. And then I think they'll haul him in again, or his lawyers in, and then say, we're going to have to do something eventually with it. It's hard to lock up a president.
Yeah, no, I keep saying I think he's going to be found guilty of something, but I don't think he's ever going to jail.
No, because here's the thing. If you want to protect him, you have to put him in solitary confinement. And this country would never, ever, ever stand for, solitary confinement.
Not even for. See, this is where I'm going to get into trouble with the left. I don't believe anyone should be in solitary confinement, not even Trump.
Yeah. Well, I was in federal corrections, and let me tell you, solitary is when I say mind-boggling, it's mind-blowing. Yeah. It can literally mentally make you have a problem immediately.
No, it's not right, and there's so much information out there. It's not right. It's just not at all. So last line I've got for you, because all I heard today from the right-wing spin machine is that this is a free speech issue. Donald Trump should be able to speak freely. It's free speech. I must have heard that 100 times today. Mm-hmm. Do you see this as a free speech issue?
Well, no. Donald Trump can say all he wants. He can say that Smith is corrupt. He can say that Smith is incompetent. He can say things about the judge if he wants to. I highly advise him not to. I really do. But he can still say all kinds of things. It's a witch hunt. Hunter Biden should be on trial, not me. Whatever he wants to say. Here's what can't happen now, though. If, in fact, any type of witness information that his lawyers become privy to, here's what witness A says, here's what witness B says, and then Trump tries to throw that out there, now you've got tampering with evidence. Now you've got obstruction of justice. He could end up with more charges. So that's not free speech. He's still free to harp about anything he wants.
Yeah.
He can call Smith names if he wants to. He can do that. But what he can't do is to take sensitive information and then talk about it. And so that doesn't, there's no trial where you can take sensitive information given to either side, because they have to, in discovery, give the information. You can't take that and take it out to the streets. There's no trial on earth that you can do that.
Yeah, that's again, one of the things that I thought was interesting is that the judge said he's a defendant. He's a criminal defendant. He's going to have restrictions like every other defendant. Thought that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, look, the lawyers are going to be privy to this sensitive information for a reason. What will happen is they see that witness A is against Trump. They're going to call everybody they know in the world and ask every dirty thing they can find about that witness. That's how this works.
Yeah.
Been there, saw it, we've done it. That's how it works. Now, that's one thing. That's the fair game or unfair justice, whatever you want to call it. But to release, names, hey, here's the person that said this. Why don't you all go after them? Why don't we intimidate them? Why don't we surround their house? That you can't do. It's not ever done in a trial.
Well, so, we may actually see it this time around. At least I expect we will see it.
He might not be in what they call the SHU, solitary confinement, but he may have a problem, and he might have additional charges.
Well, we will see how this plays out. Let the fun and the entertainment begin. But, Bob, as always, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2013. That was the day a somewhat unexpected new union formed in Bangor, Maine. Local 207 of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers represents lobster fishermen. Lobster fishermen are known for being fiercely independent, so it surprised many when some started talking union. One of those to bring up the early idea of forming a union was Magnus Lane, a fisherman originally from Iceland. There was cause for concern in the Maine lobster industry that year. A glut of lobsters had driven prices down to a 40-year low. At the same time, fuel and bait prices continued to rise. More than 100 lobstermen and women attended that first meeting. They elected officers and settled on bylaws. In a television interview, newly elected local president Rocky Ally explained, "We're the ones who catch the lobster. We should be able to control the price." Over the next year, membership grew to 600 members from up and down the Maine coast. A year after the union was founded, boat captain Julie Eaton explained the importance of the new union in a newspaper interview. She said, "For the first time, we feel like we have a voice. For the first time, we feel hope that we can protect our way of life." While some lobster fishermen support the union, others have organized against unionization. But the union has been able to win some legislative protections. For example, they were able to ensure that lobster fishermen can keep their fishing license while on active military duty. This union continues to chart new waters in the fight for working people in Maine. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. John sent me an email asking why I didn't talk about Hunter Biden. Because I've already said everything I've got to say about Hunter Biden. I said from you, I think you heard it. I hope you heard it, John. They appointed a special prosecutor, and okay, good. Well, we're going to find out what he did. If he broke the law, he's going to be held accountable. Like anybody else, he should not be held higher or lower than anyone else. I would argue, though, because his name's Biden, he is being treated much worse than anybody else would be. And that's because Republicans are using this as an opportunity to hurt Joe Biden. That's all this is about. There's no smoking gun. Every time they say, we've got it, we're going to have a hearing on it, and we're going to whistleblower. And then we find out the whistleblower, gone. Arrested somewhere for some kind of crime that they've gotten into. Look, even the guy that was appointed as the special prosecutor, I look at Ron Johnson, the attorney, the senator from Wisconsin, in a 2022 letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland, he writes, the undersigned request that you provide U.S. Attorney Weiss the full protection and authority of a special counsel. Now he says, there may be others who would be a worse pick than U.S. Attorney Weiss to be special counsel, but based on the prosecution of Hunter Biden to date, he has to be close to the worst pick. This is unbelievable. What a difference less than a couple of months makes. He's great. Full protection. He's the guy. He's special. Yes. Yeah. And now, because he didn't do the kind of witch hunting stuff that Trump accuses everybody else of doing, now he's the worst possible pick. Unbelievable. And me, I want people to be held to the same standard. So now that you've got a special counsel looking into Hunter Biden's dealings with Burisma and Ukraine and all of this, how about we go after Jared Kushner? I mean, turnabout is fair play. And I got to tell you, I think the numbers are much bigger on the Kushner side. I think the $2 billion that Kush got from the Saudis, I don't know. That's a lot. Now, the narrative that I've heard spun, and again, what the right does masterfully is they can spin a tight narrative. This is all because evidently Joe Biden got him the job because Biden needed the money, and then they got Joe Biden to get the prosecutor fired because, who knows why. And there was multi-millions of dollars of money funneled through, and now the war in Ukraine, and they tie everything together. And sadly, there are people who've bought into it without any evidence. I mean, that's the part that gets me. There's no there unless I'm missing something. And please, if there is factual stuff, I do want to see it in front of that robed person with the book. Just my thoughts. Want to hear yours? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of today's program or any program, you can grab the podcast at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.